Okay, so with the main kit directory open, we're going to first go into the 2kxx folder. We're going to create our own new folder in there, name it whatever you want. I named it Earl Clark because that's who I'm converting. I already have 2K Explorer open, and I wanted to show you where to extract your archives to for the player you're converting, and that is to this new folder that we just created. You want to extract the face and PNG archives into there, and then you're going to want to open the PNG archive in 7-zip that you just extracted there. Grab the hi-hat.scene file and its model file associated with it. Open up that hi-hat.scene file, and you want to drag those two files directly into the 2kxx folder, not in the new folder we just created. And so first thing we want to do here in the hi-hat.scene file is to clear out the LODs. And once we've done that, the important thing you need to do is go to the line where it says binary, and then it has the name of the model file, the current existing one, and change that name to NBA2kxx.model. And then right after that, go to the actual model file in the Finder and rename it to the same thing. Now we're going to get stuff we need for the 2K19 folder. And so the place where you can find the files you need, go to base files and then go to options, and then double click on that blend project file, the iOptions.blend. And once you open that up, import that same mb2kxx.model that we just renamed. And so that's your player you want to convert. Start unhiding and hiding all of these objects you see with where they say eyes underscore, and compare the position of the eyes to your player, which is the hi-hat object, and only look at it in terms of the height of the eyes, so how far up or down they are. So that's along the z-axis vertically. What is the best match? What's the closest? And so I picked eyes low mid 02. I thought that was the best match, and I'm not worried about anything else. How far forward or backward the eyes are, how far apart they are across the x-axis. So I picked that, and then I went to the folder. All those folders, folder names correspond to the Blender objects you were looking at. I copied in the files from there, from the folder of the option I chose. I pasted it in the 2K19 folder, and now we're going to go into Blender, actually save some changes. And again, you're going to want to import that mb2kxx.model. And at this point, just kind of bear with me and follow along to what you see I'm doing in Blender, and pay attention to the bottom right for specific shortcuts and selection methods that I'll be doing. And I will chime in periodically to emphasize certain things, but I think it's better that I don't try to like over explain this and make it seem more complicated than it really is. But we're basically just making selections here and creating vertex groups. And if you saw the introduction video, you'll see that for each of these players, we're going to be shrinking 1/2 of the head shape. And so right now we have the converted player here, and we're shrinking the bottom half. And so you should, for each of these players, you should, when you're done, you should have 3 vertex groups created, and bottom, middle, top, and they should replace, they should be in the place of the blend head shape group. Once you have those, go ahead and tab out and go back to object mode and export what you have to the main kit directory directly into there. So that'll just export the file that has the shrunk part of the head shape there, and then right after that, just jump into edit mode again, go to that mesh menu that I introduced in the first video, and click on the first option in that menu that comes up for the Blender add-on. Then you can just delete the object for the converted player. We don't need to use that anymore. And now we're going to import the 2K19 player. So those files that we just pasted into the 2K19 folder, we're going to open those up and do basically the same thing here. So when you save that first vertex group that's called bottom, you go to that up arrow button in the vertex groups panel and click it until the bottom, the group name bottom, is directly above the blend head shape group, and then you delete the blend head shape group. That's one important thing I want to note. And again, we're shrinking part of the head shape, but in this case it's a 2K19 player, and we shrunk the top half because we're not going to be using that. Make sure for each of these groups you actually go and click assign when you have, just like I do. And again, you've got the 3 groups now. Go ahead, back out of edit mode, in object mode, export what you have, go to the mesh menu, find the Blender add-on, and now we're clicking the second option in that pop-up menu. And once we've done that, we're going to double click on the exe file to run the application for the first time. We're going to make sure at the top we have the correct game selected that we're converting from, and then we're going to click the first button. See confirmation in the console. Then you can go ahead and exit, and you'll see a new folder that was generated when you first ran the application called a converted folder. And so we're going to be working in that folder now. But first, go to the base files and now go to the resources folder and click on the prim18a.scene file and open that up, and then go ahead into the converted folder and open up the hi-hat.scene file in there. And what this folder is that you just got, or excuse me, what this file is that you just got from the resources folder, it's essentially a source where you can just select all of the document, copy it, and then it's the prim section that you need to have, the updated prim section, and you can just paste it over the prim section in the hi-hat.scene file in the converted folder. And then also another important thing, pay attention to what I'm highlighting here and deleting. There's a portion of the bottom of the portion of the vertex format group at the bottom that we're deleting. Then you can save, go to the converted folder and import that model into Blender. And now we've got the merged model here. So you can see 2 headbands, and then the two parts of the head shape that aren't shrunk, they don't exactly line up just yet. But that's pretty much what we're going to do here. It's going to be about isolating the blend head shape, and focusing on that. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and so I have it isolated to just the entire head shape, including the parts for both players. But I'm going to go ahead and select the top half, everything that has to do with the top half, and hide that, so that I can go ahead and turn proportional editing on and make some changes to that bottom part of the group, or that bottom group, or excuse me, that bottom half, without affecting the top half. Because if I have proportional editing on, it's going to drag some of those vertices along with it, and we don't want that. But what I will do is I'm going to tab in and out periodically of edit mode and go back to object mode, just for reference to see, because all that stuff is hidden in edit mode, but when you go back to object mode, it's not hidden, and so it just serves as just a point of reference. But you're going to make the selection I just made on that bottom group. I'm checking again, back in object mode, just kind of where we're at. Go to the transform orientation menu like I'm doing here. Make sure view is selected. That'll allow you to rotate with your keypad and line it up to where the geometry you're looking at is not slanted. And according to your view, you can determine the axis that you want to transform along. And if that sounds complicated, you're basically you're allowing to you can set the axis to where straight up and down, according to your view, you can transform it along that. So you can move it along that axis and scale it and rotate it and all that. It just makes it easier. But make sure that you have proportional editing enabled by pressing O, just like I do. And so far I've rotated it a decent amount. And you'll want a proportional editing size of about 2 to 2.5. So I think I have it at 2.5 right now. So now I'm moving it a little bit. And then lastly, it's pretty well level, or about as level as it can be. Now I'm going to actually go in and resize it along the view x-axis, which is, from our viewpoint right now, what is the x-axis. And make sure you hit whatever axis you're transforming along or moving along. Make sure you hit, when you hit G or S to scale or to move or scale, make sure you hit the axis twice. So if you want to do along the x-axis, hit X once and then X again, and then you'll see at the bottom left, you'll see view X, transforming along view X. But now that I've done that, I've resized it to where the width is just about the same. Now I'm going to make a selection here. And basically I'm just trying to what I'm doing is I'm selecting the edges of both the bottom and the top half. I'm going to go over to the loop tools where it says flatten, and open that drop down tab there and set the influence to 40%, and then click the flatten button. And that's just going to help us a little more to kind of just even out these edges a little bit, to where there's not as much of a discrepancy between the gap in the middle and the gap on the outside between both of these halves of the head shape. And then we're going to do something else real quick, which is select these groups like I have. And this is just like the headband, eyes, mouth, and all that for the 2K19 player. And we're also going to shrink this because it's just going to be in the way. We don't need it. And once you've shrunk that, you'll want to move it to the origin like I do here. So basically it's shrinking it, getting it completely out of the way. So that we don't have to worry about it. And then I'm going to make that same selection again that I had prior to doing the shrinking and moving to the origin of the excess stuff. But I'm just going to make that selection so it's there for us and ready. And then I'm going to back out of edit mode and export what we have right now to the edited 1 folder. So you imported from the converted folder, now you're exporting to the edited 1 folder. And then hop back into edit mode and go ahead and just create a vertex. This is solely for the making things easier for what we're about to do. Just create a vertex group, name it blend head shape C, and assign this selection that we have already to that group. This is just going to keep track of that so that we don't have to go through and make the selection like we did the first time, which takes a few more steps. But with everything selected, hit Control E and then click Bridge Edge Loops, and you'll see that this is the automated option. So where when you have all the edges selected for both halves of the head shape, it basically auto connects them to form faces. And sometimes it works perfectly, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you have to go and do it and like divide it up into like sections. Like for Randy Foy, I just had it all selected like I did, and I clicked it once and everything was perfect. But in this case, you saw that I went ahead and undid it because it didn't look right. And I have the UV image editor in view there at the bottom, because you can tell in the UV image editor if you compare it to a place that we haven't messed with, which is like go to like the blend head shape group and select that and just compare what the coordinates look like, and you'll know what I mean. Like it clearly something's off. There's like stretching between the coordinates. So I undid that and utilizing that selection we made. And then I also just made another temporary vertex group. Basically I'm just dividing it in half, and so do exactly what I'm doing here. And then there's one more face after that, one more face you want to connect there. There should be like one little gap where there's 2 edges you can connect. And so now that you've got all those faces are connected and they all look good, now you want to hit Control F and then Triangulate Faces to triangulate them. So you should now see, while that's still selected, you should see 100 faces up there. It said 50 before because there was originally 4-sided faces called quads. But we triangulated it and now it should be 100. So we've got that part's done. Now, so we've added some faces by connecting those edges. Now we're going to actually remove some faces. And so select what I have selected here, and we're removing the parts of the converted players blend head shape group that we don't want to use and that cause problems in game. And then once you do delete and then faces only like I did there with that selection, find the Blender add-on, click the third option, open up the application, click that second button, we're going to hop back into Blender again real quick and do one more thing with this model before we delete it and move on. And that's going to be just copy what I'm doing as far as the selections I'm making, or the selection I'm making. And we're going to use the Blender add-on again here. Except now we're going to click, once we're done here, we're going to click the fourth option. Now we can go ahead and delete and move on. Run that add-on, or run the application again. Click the third button. Okay, now that that's done, we're going to, as you notice in the base files and the resources folder, you notice that there were two files in there. We did the prim18a the first time, and now we want to open up the prim18b.scene file, and then go to the edited to folder and open up the hi-hat.scene file in there. And same exact thing we did. We're just updating the vertex groups. And so paste it right over the prim section in that the hi-hat.scene file in the edited to folder. Again, this just makes it easier. I felt like it just made things more confusing and tedious because it's the same every time. Just to save you guys a step. So paste that prim section in, save. Now go ahead and find, go to the edited to folder and import that scene file there. Make sure you have the option to clicked or checked to import the skeleton as well. For the time being, just go ahead and hide it, but we will be using that later. At this point, you want to go back again for one last time to that NBA 2K xx.model file. So this is the 2K 18 player, whatever, from whatever game you're converting from. And we're gonna import him real quick just to be a source for, or a target for shrink wrapping. So it's at this point that we've done the conversion process and like all the steps of that, and now it's about, now that we have everything combined and set up and connected, now it's about shrink wrapping back what we have to the 2K18 player to get it to resemble it as closely as possible. So I went ahead and did the main four groups that you probably know how to do if you've done a shrink wrap before. So I've already done, or you've probably already done that before, but now you might want to take note. I'm not sure if maybe you have or haven't done this, but with the skeleton imported, you do have some extra vertex groups that you can utilize in the model, and you can do some more precise shrink wrapping. And so I'm just I'm just selecting all the groups that I want, duplicating it, and then picking the next group that I want to use in the shrink wrapping. And so just do what I'm doing for each of these same groups here. And this is basically, it's going to help with everything above about the shoulders that doesn't get covered when you do shrink wrapping the original way, which is just those 4 main arms, torso, hidden legs groups. That will always, well, not always, but most of the time it will leave like a gap right around where the traps are, and then the neck area, and then and the whole like trap neck area doesn't necessarily match up to the head area, or the from like the middle of the neck up. So that's what this is going to do. All these groups, they do the shrink wrapping like incrementally, as opposed to those first 4 that we did. Like, it basically just snaps it right away to the position, and like clicking it again doesn't do anything. But in this case, once we have all these done, or once we've got these groups picked and set up, what I'm doing here is starting at the bottom group here and then moving up. I'm going to hit the copy button to copy that modifier. I'm doing that 10 times because, as I said, it's incrementally done. And you'll be able to see in the screen as I go that the difference that clicking copy these additional times makes. And so now that we've done the second bit of shrink wrapping here, now you can see that as opposed to before, things are looking pretty matched up in terms of the trap, neck, and head area, and along the shoulders where you usually see that gap. And it's also the faces that we connected there. It has smoothed that out, and it doesn't look so obvious. And so now you've seen the changes that it made. Now go ahead and apply those modifiers that we had there. You can delete the 2K18 object in Blender. Now we're importing the 2K19 object. And just like the 2K18 player, this is just for reference, but in this case, we're not shrink wrapping to this. We're referring again to the eyes and how they compare in their position. I'm just kind of refreshing myself on the difference in their position. And now we are going to move the upper part of the head for the high head object. So that's the merged converted file here. And pay attention to the selection I'm making and how I'm making it. And so basically we're just selecting some portion here of so like mid-neck, middle of the neck and up, and with proportional editing enabled by pressing O again. Now we're going to line up the eyes along the y-axis. And so I'm going to move it back to try to line it up. And I'm going to rotate it a little bit as well. So you're just like, you're not trying to get everything perfect, but you're trying to get it like if you look at the opening of the eye and like how the eyelashes are angled as well, just trying to get it in the ballpark. Because if you spend too much time trying to get it perfect, like it can be really tedious, and it may not be worthwhile. But just lining it up to the position of those eyeballs, and then if you can, like, the angle of the opening by rotating the head like we had there. Because as you can see now, there is a further way that we can match up the eyes, and that's why we have the skeleton imported. And that is, but it's primarily to address, now that we've addressed along the z-axis with the fire or the base file that we selected, and with the movement of the head here to line up along the y-axis, we're going to utilize the skeleton and make some changes to the eye bones in the skeleton to modify the along the x-axis any differences there might be. And you can do other tweaks as far as the y and z-axis there as well, but I think the best and cleanest way to do it is to try and do it like I've done here, because if you get too crazy with the skeleton, like, things can really get changed and messed up. And ideally, you're just, with each of these steps, you're focusing on one axis. And so I finished just rotating it a little bit more, and I think I might move it up a little bit to line it up. So in this case, I am moving up just a tad along the z axis, but I wanted the bulk of that, I don't want to be doing at this point. But little small adjustments you can make at different steps, but it's just the idea is just the major changes you have to make, save them for those for each of the separate steps between selecting a base file, moving the 3D head to line it up, and now what we're doing, which is adjusting the skeleton values. But again, as I said, the focus here is now on what, if any, adjustments need to be made to the skeleton to better reflect where the eyes are along the x-axis. So usually that's going to be in terms of how far apart the eyes are, and sometimes it might be that both eyes, like if you just look at the position of both eyes, like both are a little to the left or to the right, and so jump into the or not jump in, click on the NBA Bones object and go into edit mode in there, and then as you saw in the introduction video, look for that same menu that you were finding the Blender add-on in with the player model, but it's armature, and click that first option, and that basically is just going to get everything set up for you. It lines up the skeleton where it needs to be and isolates the groups or the bones that we want to mess with. And so for each eye, there's 5 total bones we'll be messing with, and it is best to leave it as leave it as it is and make changes to all of those bones for each eye at once. I wouldn't advise picking individual bones for each eye and moving them around too much. So what I've noticed is that each of these eyes just needs to be moved a little bit along the x-axis. And so I moved each eye individually, just a little bit along the X to better reflect the position of the converted player's eyes. And now I went and clicked that in the armature menu again, but I clicked the second option in the Blender add-on, and that's the final time we will use the Blender add-on. And what I forgot to do here is when I click that second option, I save those changes to the scene file, but I realized I still need to actually export the player itself, the model from Blender with all those changes we made doing the shrink wrap and all that. And so this is also very important. You will see this error when you try to export. This is the final step. Ignore that error. Just trust me when I say this, that that error, this particular error can be ignored, and you can just proceed on like it didn't happen, and the file will still export where you want it to export, and it'll still save all those changes that we need to save. So it will have exported the model to the final folder, and the changes we made to the skeleton and then exported with the Blender add-on will have been applied to the hi-hat.scene file in the final folder. And now that we are done in Blender, what I'm doing here is I went back to that I went back to that 2KXX folder, and then the folder that we created with the original archives for the face and PNG in there. I dragged those, copied them into the modded folder, and now I just rename those files to be the first cyberface ID that popped into my head, so that we can go into create a player and cheat engine and load up a specific cyberface and see this converted player. And so you just copy those archives in as is to the modded folder, but then you want to open up the PNG archive specifically, delete everything except for the appearanceinfo.rdat file, and then any textures. So like if there's a hair color, or if there's chest color, legs color, anything texture related, keep that in the appearance info. Delete everything else. Delete everything else, and then go back, go to the 2K19 folder, drag in the math nodes file from there, and then lastly go to that final folder I was referring to and copy in those updated files, the hi-hat.scene and the final files for the scene file and the model file. Paste those in, and I had to exit Blender because it wasn't letting me paste in those files because they were being used by Blender. But so now we should have all the files where we need them. Now it's time to check it out in game. And I'm just waiting on my controller I just had to wait on my controller to get turned on. I'm gonna open Cheat Engine, and the cyberface ID that came to mind earlier, I am now going to, and that I changed the archives to in the modded folder. I'm going to go into Cheat Engine, change the created player ID to that, go to Choose the Gear to refresh, and right now, don't freak out, this happens where the geometry looks all messed up. Just for whatever reason, every now and then when you go into create a player or just edit player in general, the edit player screen, it will do that. But it shows, I have never seen it do it in game, and then if you just refresh it and come right back, you'll see the geometry as it's supposed to be. I don't know why it does that with the face geometry going all crazy, but I have tested quite a bit, and it has always showed up like it's supposed to in game, and that's only been every now and then in the edit player screen. So that's all I have for you guys, and thanks for watching.